Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the You Don't Understand podcast. So, for this week's episode, we kind of wanted to build off of everything we were talking about last week. We kind of switched it up a little bit. My mom was asking me the questions, and we were talking a little bit about how spirituality affected our relationship. For this week's episode, we wanted to dive more into my own personal relationship with spirituality. So, it's going to be mostly her asking me questions this week again. But yeah, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Hello, everyone. Looking forward to this today's session. And yes, I'm enjoying this part where I get to ask you questions and drill you a little bit. Otherwise, it's always been me on this side and trying to explain things. Yeah, I know last time when we were talking about how my spiritual journey helped me have a different perspective, a better perspective at looking at the same situation that we were dealing between the two of us. So now, if I have to ask you, one, of course, would be what really spirituality means to you. Like, what is your understanding? I'm not expecting some thing that you have to give me some answer like that, but like in your own understanding, what spirituality means for you. And then, two, how and what kind of perspective was it able to give you to look at things, So, definitely, if you can elaborate more on that so that the kids today's generation can understand more better for why things are happening, how things are happening, and how they can come to some sort of an acceptance to whatever is happening. The acceptance part of it, that's very important. So yeah, let's hear you right now. What's your understanding of spirituality?
Well, I will start off by saying that my understanding has definitely changed over the years. Um, I will say growing up, spirituality was kind of just whatever was told to me, like aspects like karma or dharma or moksha, like those were the three main, like if someone asked me about spirituality, those were the first three things that I thought about, or I would say I didn't really have like a core foundational um rooted understanding of what it truly was. Now looking back, and I think my perspective and my thinking about it changed when we were going through our issues in high school. And it really just comes down to being aware. Um, not necessarily, obviously, I think what a lot of people, kids my age, or even honestly, even adults, tend to do is they think, okay, awareness, but that just means self-awareness. And that's not just self-awareness. Means like being aware of like everything that is going on in your life, in the world. Like things are happening to you for reasons that are not fully in your control at times. And spirituality asks you to be aware of why you're experiencing things the way you're experiencing them, why certain um why you're feeling certain emotions the way you're feeling them, why you are even being put into a situation to begin with. Um I think changing my understanding about that, because like the human nature, it's very like easy to sit there and be like, oh, like what to like focus in and like grasp onto what's tangible. And spirituality does ask you to like let go and like detach from that part of yourself and really understand and have faith in all the different moving parts that you don't have control over. And why certain things are happening to you the way they're happening to you. It took me a long time to like accept that part because it's again, human nature never wants to give up control. It's a very, very hard thing to sit there and live with yourself knowing that you can't control every aspect of your life. It's a very hard pill to swallow. However, I think I've said this last week too, it's a very necessary pill to swallow because you're not going to be able to move past situations in life. You're not going to be able to have a different perspective than your own biased perspective on experiences until you move past it a little bit. So I think that plus a big thing was really understanding and learning how relationships move in the terms of like karma and soul and perspectives like that. You growing up in a Hindu household, it's always like, oh, like karma this, karma that, like what you put out there is what you receive. But until you become fully aware of how that is implemented in your life and every single relationship that you have, it's very easy to take these ideals and these morals and these ethics for granted. You don't really, it's like you that moment when it clicks in your head, you honestly like realize or you actually become conscious of like what's going on in your life and how relationships are working in your life. So I definitely would think spirituality for me comes down to awareness, you know, just being aware of all the moving parts. And then once you've hit that milestone, then it comes to acceptance. And acceptance was a very, very hard thing for me to come to terms with because if you are in a situation that isn't good, you don't want to be able to accept that your situation is bad. But to even realize that whatever's going on in your life right now is not good to begin with, you have to accept that you're in a bad place. And that was very hard for me to do, I think, growing up.
So, of course, as you just rightly mentioned, that now your understanding of spirituality is much more different or better or evolved than what it was then. We're like talking almost 4, 5 years back, right? Yeah. So, like, just for our viewers or kids your age, or not now age, but the age when you were there, how did it even start for you? Why? How did it? I mean, not even how. Like, what part of it made you feel that okay, this could be a better way to understand my situation, or like what clicked? What was that situation or circumstances that made you bring that switch, or you even wanted to bring that switch in your thought process?
I really did struggle with trying to wrap my head around why things were happening to me the way they were happening to me. I ne I was deep in this mentality of like, what did I do to deserve this? Why is this happening to me? Like, I've been a good person all my life. I've strived my best to be good to other people, and yet people are consistently terrible to me. What am I doing wrong? What? Like literally just what am I like what? And it was a very frustrating cycle to be in because there's no tangible answer. Um, and then I remember um me and you were actually sitting in the guest room because at the time like you were doing meditation, so sometimes you'd like, sleep in the guest room. And I'd walked in and, I'm sobbing. And this is right after I'd gotten out of a pretty like abusive relationship. And I sat there and I was like, why me? Like, what about me is causing me to experience these things? And I still remember the way you explained it was so convoluted. And yet in that moment, it clicked because it gave me a whole new way of looking at relationships. And what it was you had, told me that, well, you'd start off the conversation with saying, well, you're experiencing this relationship because of karma. And I was like, okay, screw karma. Like, I'm so over it. I don't care. Like, why is this happening to me? And you were like, you have to think about it this way. These are experiences that you're experiencing now, yes, but this is karma that you are trying to even out and balance out with this person, and not this person, but this soul for many, many lifetimes. So instead of looking at it like, oh, this is happening to you, and like, this is happening to Diksha, and this sucks, whatever, whatever, think about it. That soul has now undertaken the responsibility and the burden to come back in this lifetime and make you experience these things so that you can finish off your karma with this soul and never have to deal with it again and just be one step farther in your spiritual journey. And I won't lie, the first time I heard that, I was like, no, like you're actually just making up things right now. Like I don't know what you're talking about. But you said that, I sat on it that night, and that way of thinking is not necessarily excusing the behaviors that one person does to another, but it is a better way of explaining the why of why something is happening to you. Or, and it that's honestly, that way of thinking is what eventually allowed me to stop being like what's happening to me? Like what did I do for these things to happen to me? Like it it gives you a much easier perspective to reconcile with your experiences and your emotions and your situations. So you're not in this constant like victim mentality or victim spiral. That way of thinking is what allowed me to be in acceptance of my own life story and my own life journey.
So, as you just said that, you probably rolled your eyes thinking, like, what is she talking about, right? So, obviously, kids your generation who are not, in your case, you were getting exposed to karma and soul and liberation, all these concepts, because I was consciously walking on that journey, and I made sure that I am expressing what I am feeling or what changes or thought process are changing in the household. So my household, including you guys, was exposed to these terms, these words, and you had some understanding, maybe not believe in it, but you at least knew these words. But say there is someone out there, who's really struggling and they don't have this exposure. And if you have to tell them to look at their situation, what is it that you would tell them, and why would they want to believe you or to even give that second chance to, like, oh, maybe this could be the reason, or maybe I should change this and look at the, it's like the same way that the glass is half empty or half full, it depends on how you see it, right? That's what the main thing is. So what would you say?
I actually did have a struggle with this too growing up because explaining to my friends, you know, what I'm experiencing was a very hard thing to do because obviously not everyone is growing up in, like you said, is growing up in this type of household. Um, and the more practical understanding that I came to was the purpose of life, really deep, I know, but the purpose of life is to constantly grow. Every single decision that you make is to grow. No matter what way you see it or what way, like the idea and aspect of like evolving and growing is so intrinsically human and, is very, very important to one's personhood. And if you want to, so the more practical understanding I came to was if you want to grow, you have to experience. That's like the end all be all. You can't grow unless you've experienced because then you have no understanding or perspective about different types of situations. For that to happen, for you to understand or for you to be able to grow and experience, you have to allow those things to happen to you. It's not because you can't sit there and look at it from the negative perspective and be like, oh well, all these things are happening to me and my life sucks and yada yada yada. Had you not experienced these things, would you still be able to sit here with the level of expertise or maturity or wiseness that you have today? If And the answer is always going to be no, because you're not going to have perspective if you don't have experience. So that's the way I grew up explaining it to my friends is if you want to evolve as a person, you have to experience things. And if you want to experience things, you have to let life happen to you to a certain extent. To a certain
I wonder where is this quote coming from?
extent. For our viewers out there, all she's ever said growing up is let life happen to you or like let life happen. And trust me, me and Adi have been so sick of hearing it over the years, but she's not entirely wrong. You do, to a certain extent, have to let life happen to you. Now, that doesn't mean give up all control and just see what happens. You still have to do the basics to get through the day, to get through your life, eat, sleep, work, survive. But if you want to keep growing as a person and you want to keep having the ability to make the decisions that are best for you, you have to have some expertise to back it up. Um, Again, all these things are a very hard pill to swallow because it all comes down to like giving up control, and nobody wants to do that. And that's why I think, I talked so heavily about faith last week. And it doesn't have to be faith in a higher being, it could be faith in yourself or literally faith in anything. But that is also such a huge part about it because to give up control, you have to have hope, belief, or faith in something to keep you going. And that's what I think is so important for people in my generation or even adults who feel so like lost, who feel like who are like letting I've met so many people in my life more recently, especially in my early 20s, who are letting life happen to them, but they have nothing to like ground them or really root them into something so that they can hold on to. And I've told them the same thing is like you have to have faith in something. It's the only way you're going to be able to give up that semblance of control and like really have a more overview perspective of your life rather than like just going through the motions and like bogging yourself down with everything that you're feeling.
So let's see how you applied that awareness. So the basic awareness is that you are a soul who are in a human body trying to have a human experience.
Mm.
Is that how you would see your life, or that's the shift that you brought into yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, for someone to even say that, yeah, I'm a soul in a human body, even that could be a very heavy concept to even digest and think. As I said, that our household was constantly, these words were spoken, so somewhere it became part of life. But for someone who's never experienced any of these things, and you say, well, there is a soul, how do you even explain that to someone who's like really, really naive and they've never heard these things? And you would want a friend of yours who's come to you, and because the reason I'm even trying to dig into all these things is because I want the children to understand, because there is so much that they don't understand with this perspective. If they start somewhere, if this shift happens for them, uh, there is a very different way of, as you said, that having an overview, like an objective. You mostly become, even though you're going through the emotion, still become the witness of the life that's happening to you. And it's much more easier to go through the process that way than versus constantly being in those emotions and not being able to step out of it, like step out of the circle and then look at it.
Mhm.
So if someone comes to you, a friend of yours, who's like, what are you talking about, soul, and what is this thing? So how would you even start something like this with them? To even talk to them, like,
I honestly, when I was first trying to explain the concept of like, or the difference between like soul and body to my friends, I would ask them to take like a step back and look at moments that were not, or like look at parts of your life or moments that are not entirely like flesh and blood. For example, example that I always use is intuition. Science is like, cells, atoms, all those types of things are not going to be able to explain what intuition is or how that works. These are, or that gut feeling. Gut feeling is also another big one. Those are things that are not explained by wires or, brain circuits in your head. Those are things that are very intrinsic. Intrinsic to what? It's not the flesh and blood and the bones and the muscle and the fat that make up this human body is intrinsic to something that's completely different. And I asked them to focus on that. Like that was kind of my explanation of like, soul. Not like because it's very, very hard to describe something that's not tangible. So, and they're like I would always talk about gut feeling or intuition or the things that aren't necessarily like human or person and have no explanation and explain to them that that feeling is coming from something that's deeper inside of you, something that's, fueling the fire inside of you, that's lighting up this body because it unfortunately it is a lot higher than whatever this vessel is. Um, Now, obviously, not a lot of people believe in that. And to those people, I say that's fine because even if you don't want to look at it like from like we were talking about like, overhead or a, objective point of view, even if you don't want to look at it as like a soul moving through life, yada yada yada, you can still to a certain extent understand and still look at it objectively by even looking at your just, your personhood and being like, you are one person that's among these 8 billion other people that is moving through life and is going through experiences. And it's you can still take yourself and remove yourself from the situation and still have that perspective of like even within these 8 billion people my experiences, my situations, they matter. How I deal with things, they matter. All these aspects you can still to a certain degree implement. But to go back to your original question, I always focused in on like that gut feeling. That's not human, that's something higher than you.
So, so say when you and me were having all these issues and especially communication, right? Our major issue was not being able to really communicate with each other, and there was a lot of misunderstanding. How did you, and of course, there was a lot of your own decisions that you made also brought a lot of suffering or pain to you, those painful experiences. How did you implement this thought process, and how were you able to maneuver yourself through those emotions? Because I don't want people to think that, oh, this will take away the pain, or this whole new perspective will not let them go through the experience. You still have to go through the experience. Then what changes?
I can be the first one to say it does not take away the pain. It might make the pain even worse. But um, what changes is the the strength and the conviction you have to keep pushing forward. Because now you have a reason as to why you are doing this in the first place. Putting yourself through a very emotionally challenging or even physically challenging experience is hard if you have no understanding of why you're doing this in the first place. Why do this when I can sit in bed and be complacent with my life and, not do anything? So for me, it again, the same understanding that you had given me for my other relationships, I had implemented into this one. We as two, you know, souls came together in this lifetime to finish whatever karmic balance we had. If you want to take it in terms of like more objective and practical, we are two people that came together to experience these experiences with each other so that we could grow as individuals. Can take it both ways. In both scenarios, it asks you to obviously it's not going to take away the pain. It's still going to make you go through this experience. But it honestly just comes down to how it answers the why. It gives you a reason to keep going. Why would I want to sit there and not want to grow? Why would I not want to evolve as a person or a soul or whatever it may be?
Because I do remember there were times when, for you, when you were spiraling down and the depression, even getting out of bed was a challenge for you. You didn't want to do anything. You didn't want to take shower. You didn't want to, like literally those days, right? What? how did this change motivate you to even take those baby steps towards your own betterment?
This is actually going to sound really hypocritical, but because we just talked about how you should let life happen to you. But sometimes it is okay to, it's like you're playing a game with life, right? It's like a little back and forth going. And you, like I said earlier, you can't to us you can let life happen to you to a certain extent, but you can't let like that like you have to push back to a certain extent as well. You have to find that middle ground with life where you play, you make a move, and then they make a move, or life makes a move, and then you make a move, and you're going back and forth. Because you can sit there and let life happen to you, but if you're not playing the game of life either, then are you truly experiencing anything? Obviously I'm letting life happening to me. I'm sitting in bed, I'm not getting up, I'm not taking a shower, whatever. That's still necessary, like that's still life happening to
You're
me.
still alive.
I'm still alive. I'm still like living, breathing, whatever. I'm letting life happen to me. But am I experiencing anything other than, sitting in my bed and rotting? No. And if I continue to sit in my bed and rot, I'm not going to mature. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to evolve. I'm not like fundamental things that are essential to human nature and even to my soul. I'm going to miss out on all those things. And even on like a practical level, I don't want to be, and this is like what, when I was 16, 17, I don't want to be 16 or 17 missing out on like core childhood memories or, foundational experiences like going to your first parties or going to prom or stuff like that. Like I don't want to miss out on those things and looking back 10 years from now, still sitting in that bed because I didn't play the game of life. I'm just gonna sit in a bunch of regret and despair. It's very easy in that moment to spiral and get caught up in what's happening to you right then and there. But this is where we talked about you have to bring yourself back a little bit and have the perspective that whatever's happening in this moment is not it's not going to be your entire life unless you let it be your entire life. And you don't want to have to sit there 10 years from now and be like, wow, I've done absolutely nothing because I was too scared to play the game of life, or I was too scared to experience the things that could have possibly experienced, or I could have possibly experienced, whether it be negative or positive. I think a huge reason, everyone is too like, or doesn't really take that journey is because they're scared. Totally fair. Fear of the unknown. Of course, another part that's intrinsic to human nature. You don't want to undertake something that you don't know about, but you can't let that fear hold you back because that fear is only going to lead you to more regret. And, it's just it's just not going to work out in the end.
It's nice to hear. I think this is the first time that we have had a conversation where I get an opportunity to hear your side of how it changed for you. I've seen the changes, of course, and we've had so many discussions amongst us, but I've never got an opportunity to actually hear you, to see how you implemented those small things. So I mean, of course, this is a very deep topic, and I would definitely want to go more deeper into it. But then, of course, at the same time, I want the whole intention for us to be doing this podcast is more about giving the younger generation a different kind of perspective at looking at their life, um, especially the ones who are struggling in life right now, or with life, they are struggling because they are not able to get a handle on it or a hang on it. And no matter how much ever they try, there some inability. Sometimes people have social anxiety, sometimes people have like a speech problem, or there's so many things as a youngster someone faces, and I think a lot of adults also face because they did not get an opportunity to deal with it in their growing years. and somewhere eventually it does catch up with them, and then they also start going through. There are so many midlife crises that happens to people, so yeah, I understand spirituality and the whole concept of it, but then in your generation, in your generation, with so many things happening, um, not just in relationship, otherwise also, I have seen that people sometimes get too confused with the religious aspect and the spiritual aspect. You want to talk a little bit about that? That how you see the religion and the religious practices? Are they spiritual in nature according to your understanding? Or the spiritual practice or spirituality implementation, the philosophies of that, the practicality of it? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I do think in any religion, in any religious practice, there is some sort of spirituality intrinsically, you know, aligned. However, the way I describe it for my life and the way I view it, when I practice religion, like doing puja, going to the temple, doing arti at home, when I pray, those types of things, I'm doing that so that I can really hone in on that connection that I feel with something higher than me. I do that to remind myself of that connection. And also because, the beauty of religion and people who grow up in a faith is that there are so many cultural things that are tied to that faith and tied to that religion. Um, so it connects me to, my culture as well. It connects me to my culture. It connects me to my family, my ancestors, whatever it may be. It or that higher power. It connects me to something. But
Is that a grounding factor for you?
I would say it's a grounding factor. Yes, it does in times where if too much is going on, when I really need to slow down and just be doing some like partaking in religious and religious practices helps me. Spirituality, I would say is ways of thinking, is philosophies, it's ethics, morals, values that you can implement in your life, or you should implement in your life for a better understanding or a better perspective. I don't connect to spirituality. I like, for me, I'm not connecting to spirituality necessarily. I'm using spirituality to connect with myself and connect with something higher. Um, with religion, I'm doing these practices and I'm taking part in all of this stuff to connect me to something that's a little bit more tangible. I would say with religion, it's a lot more ta tangible than it is with spirituality, as I've said multiple times before. Um, but yeah, I do think with spirituality, it's much more philosophy. It's how you can view life differently. With religion, it's more how I can just bring myself at peace a little bit more in times of need. And then obviously connect with my family, my culture, stuff like that.
So it would not be wrong to say that if you are exposed to your culture and your religion's practices, religious practices, I'm not saying like really heavy practices. I can see sometimes Indian parents expose their children to a lot because there's so much in Indian culture. I mean, Hindu culture, right? There's so much that we can do religion wise, and the amount of text that we have and the amount of literature we have. I mean, it is like an ocean of its own. But even if we can give the children the exposure of at least the basic, like a family unit with some basic religious practices that kind of connect them to their culture and give them a better understanding of those religious practices, because in the end, even those religious practices um, are spaces, Sometimes they are mind space, sometimes they are physical space. But they are basically spaces that are being created so that you can connect to yourself,
Mhm.
right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
Okay. So like you go to a temple, you might be sitting on your bed, but if you're in a temple, automatically the vibration of the place,
the
the
energy is
energy
different.
of the place, it just shifts, and you also shift with it, and it puts you in a space where your mind is more aligned there. So that's what some spirituality you're saying is more about value system. Is that what it is?
I'm not saying spirituality is more a value system. It's just a lot, it's a more abstract way of,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, both ideas are still connecting you to something. But religion is a much more tangible way of connecting you to something because it asks you to do stuff, do puja, go to the temple, do seva, donate money, whatever it is. Spirituality is a lot more abstract because it's asking you to fundamentally change the way you view the world and the way you view your place in the world. So while but I say that, and yet I would still argue that spirituality might still be an easier way to get through life. Because it's asking you to change, but once you get over that hurdle of changing and are more open and willing to that, the journey is far more easier. Whereas religion, I feel like, taking part in religious practices to a certain extent, like at one point you do hit a dead end. Because how many religious practices are you going to take part in to understand why someone is treating you the way they're treating you, right? So I would say one is more abstract than the other, but one, once you like with spirituality, once you just get over that hurdle of change, I think it's a much easier journey to take.
Hmm. We can definitely, are we in the time limit or are we going
Yeah, we're
over?
actually about to hit the time limit.
Okay, so my internal clock is already working. So, definitely, I would want to talk more about this whole spirituality thing because I do feel that that is what really helped you change and bring the change and take your life to wherever it is today, you know. And I also want everyone to have this understanding of the religious aspect of it, that it is important. It's not important, it's very important. But then life itself is like an institution, and when you are in kindergarten, you study as a kindergartner. When you are in middle school, you study as a middle schooler. And then you go to your graduation. Your degree is when you are on your own. You have learned everything. And there comes a time when you start implementing those things and then making your own life out of it. You know? So I guess that's how I would see that, that's what in the end spirituality would do. But of course we'll talk about it more in our next episode.
I
And
think, yeah, I was gonna say maybe next episode we can get your perspective on spirituality in your life and how it's shaped and changed, which is going to be a very long conversation, but because you have like 20 something years on me, but I think that'd be fun.
it would be definitely. I would, I mean, today we got a perspective of you as your 16, 17-year-old self, trying to bring these little small changes. um, I got to this whole thing in my mid 30s. So my journey started then. It's still been a 15-year journey and very long and very, very tedious journey. But it has been one of the most beautiful journey of um, this lifetime, or probably any lifetime that I've ever had on this earth. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that, and we can continue going forward from here. We can share more of our present experiences. We can keep going back and forth with our experiences, and we can talk more about the aspects of spirituality. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Anyway, thank you to our viewers for supporting us so far. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, we'd love to do topics that you guys would be interested in, so please comment down below. We will be opening up social media for this podcast very soon, so be on the lookout for that. It'll be up, I promise. But yes, thank you so much, and we hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Thank you so much, and thank you to you always for doing this with me. I'm really loving this journey, and I really hope that in the end, if even one life is impacted in a positive way with whatever we are doing, every minute is worth it. All right, take care. Love you.
Bye bye.
Bye.